Okay, today we're going to be solving linear equations by graphing. We're just going to go over a few examples, and part of what we're doing you've actually done before. It's just another way to get your answer to an equation. And it's wanting to focus on the vocab that I'm going to tell you. So first vocab term is root. The root is just a solution to an equation, so the answer to an equation. Another word for that is zero. Zero is the x-intercept. So anytime you graph an equation, we can call the root the zero or the solution whatever the x-intercept is. So root, zero, solution pretty much all mean the same thing in terms of graphing, and again it's the x-intercept. So we're going to focus on that in the last two questions. This first question, we want to know the root or the solution to the graph below and describe what this value means in the context. So if I'm asking for the root or the solution, I'm asking for the x-intercept. The x-intercept here is 5. So the root or the solution is x equals 5. When they ask you what does this mean in this context or this situation, we want to look closely at the labeling of the graph. So if I'm looking at 5, this is 5 hours. So we could say at 5 hours. And then I want to see how does that match up to the y-axis. So it's when y is 0. And what's going on with the y-axis? That says amount of water. So that means 0 gallons of water. So at 5 hours, there are 0 gallons of water. So anytime it asks, what does this mean in this situation? What's going on with the graph? You just need to look at the labels and be specific with the labels. Okay. Now moving on to the bottom two. So it says solve each equation by graphing. We know how to solve these equations normally. And we're going to do that later to check our answers, but I want to show you what it's going to look like on a graph and then just practice our vocab with that. And also we just need some practice graphing. So when it asks for you to solve an equation by graphing, it wants you to get all terms on one side. I typically put all my terms on the left side. So to get this -2 to the left side, I'm going to add 2 to the 1. Don't add it to the 3x because those aren't like terms. So we get 3x plus 3 equals -2 plus 2 is 0. So my goal here is to have 0 on one side. We will be practicing this a lot throughout the year. Once you have 0 on one side, I'm going to change that to 3x plus 3 equals y, just because that's what we're used to when we graph. So you can either use flip and set form to graph this. I'm going to make a t-chart just to practice with it. So I'm going to plug in -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. If I plug in -2, 3 times -2 is -6, plus 3 is -3. Plug in -1, 3 times -1 is -3, plus 3 is 0. Plug in 0, 3 times 0 is 0, plus 3 is 3. Plug in 1, 3 times 1 is 3, plus 3 is 6. And 2, 3 times 2 is 6, plus 3 is 9. So I'm going to graph these points, -2, -3, -1, 0, 0, 3, 1, 6, and 2, 9. It's not going to fit on my graph, but that's okay. So make my line. So the solution is, where did it hit the x-intercept, or the x-axis? So it's right here. So my solution is -1, 0. Now a way to check your answer is to solve it like we normally would. So this was my original equation. If I told you to solve for x, you subtract 1 to get 3x equals -3, then divide by 3 to get x equals -1. So we got the same answer, -1, -1. So we did it correctly. So again, since we know how to do just solve a normal equation, if you're just asked to solve an equation, just solve it. I'm just having you do it with the graph to have us practice graphing things and for you to know that the solution is always the x-intercept. It's also called the zero or the root. Number 2, I'm going to get all my terms on one side. I'm going to move it to the left side. So I'm going to move this 2x over and move that 6 over by adding. So always do the opposite. 2x minus 2x is 0, so that's gone. Negative 4 plus 6 is 2 equals 2x minus 2x 0, negative 6 plus 6, 0. So again, my goal was to get 0 on the right side, which I did. So now I can rewrite the equation as 2 equals y, and then graph it. So I'm going to plug in negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. But I don't have any x's to plug in. It says y equals 2, which means no matter what x is, y is 2. So when I graph this, it's going to look like this. So then we need to look, where does it hit the x-axis? It doesn't, which means it is no solution. And we should have known it's going to be no solution anyway, because when I got to this point, 2 equals 0, I know that 2 doesn't equal 0. So that's just a way to check your answer. Since 2 doesn't equal 0, I know that means no solution. And the graph was just a way to verify that because it didn't hit the x-axis. If you have any questions, please let me know.